Good morning, everybody. It's about 7 o'clock on Thursday. I think it's the 31st of July. And obviously I'm up doing my morning run. Not too windy, so hopefully you can hear the commentary through the clip-on microphone. So let's get into it. I'm going to talk to you today about the government's plan, that is Australian Commonwealth Government, federal government's plan to ban children under 13 from being able to access YouTube. Now, they have passed legislation that bans a number of social media sites, including Facebook and others, for children under 13. And I'll talk about the reasons for doing that in a moment. Initially, YouTube was going to be excluded on the grounds that it had educational value. But the E-Safety Commissioner advised the government that there were some serious concerns about content on YouTube, and so now it's been included in the list of platforms that will be banned for children 13 years and under. Now, before I get into the whys and wherefores and all that sort of stuff, I should say up front, of course, I have skin in this game. I have a YouTube channel, but I don't have any commercial arrangements. I don't have any financial arrangements. I don't have a Patreon. I don't make any money out of it. I don't have sponsors. I don't have merchandise, anything like that. So it's not a case of me having a gripe because I would lose income or revenue or anything like that. My channel exists purely as a hobby, and basically for my enjoyment. Of course, I have subscribers and I appreciate all of them, but I don't go looking for them, and I don't, as I said, rely on YouTube for revenue or income or anything like that. But there are people who do. I'll come to that in a moment. Now, the reasons why the government wants to ban these social media sites is that they say that there are people and perhaps even organisations that use these platforms to groom children and to I'm not sure if I can think of the right word here, to implant in children's heads ideas that we as Australians would not find acceptable, that in some cases may even be dangerous. And in talking about it in an item on the ABC News last night, they cited the case of a young girl who I think may have been about 14 years old, who, after listening to and watching videos from so-called influencers, I have to say I absolutely hate that term, but watching videos from influencers, she developed an eating disorder and eventually took her own life. Now, without question, that is a tragedy. It's an awful thing. And when a thing like that happens, we want somebody to pay. There's been a death. Somebody made that happen by saying terrible things to this little girl, young girl, young woman by allowing crazy ideas to build up in her head about her body to the point where she decided she just couldn't continue living. And that is an awful, awful thing. And we do want someone to pay. We say, well, somebody's got to be responsible here. Is it the person that made the video? Is it the platform that allowed the video? And the government might say, well, we've appealed to these people who own these platforms to take down this sort of material, and they refuse to do so, so we're just going to ban the whole lot. Now, in some ways, I understand that reaction. A child has lost their life. They've lost their life because somebody has used a platform they know is popular with young children to say, or plant awful ideas in this child's mind. And that's just one example. We hear people who attempt to groom young men for all sorts of reasons, sometimes to implant their own twisted ideas of relationships and the place of women in society and so forth, and sometimes to radicalise them for various political causes and so on. And I don't want to bring politics into this too much, but I mean, it is a government decision, so it is kind of a political decision, whether I like it or not. So those are some of the reasons. Now, I don't want to get into an argument about free speech and so forth, because first of all, I'm not a constitutional lawyer, and I don't have any expertise in that area. But I think I'm on pretty solid ground when I say that despite what some people think, we do not have in the Australian Constitution an unfettered right to free speech as our American colleagues are always claiming. There is a qualified right of free speech. Anyway, as I said, I'm not a constitutional lawyer, so I don't want to get too deeply into that. Now, the people who own these platforms, YouTube, Facebook, so forth, they have the capacity to remove offensive material. They have keywords and phrases and algorithms and machines and AI stuff, and even in some cases actual human beings who would be able to listen, view, whatever the material on these platforms that they believe is not right, and remove it. Sometimes legitimate content makers get warnings that they breached the community standards of the platform, and there should be the warning. And if they get 3 strikes, then their channel is deleted. So it's possible for the platforms to do that. They just choose not to do it. So the government says, okay, we're going to introduce this legislation, which they have already done. Now they're working out the details to say that anyone under 13 cannot cannot access YouTube. Now, in my case, I have, if you are a subscriber or even a casual viewer of my channel, I have a number of playlists, running videos, motorcycle videos, videos about Goulburn and Tasmania, but I have one called bedtime stories. I started doing that about 10 or 12 years ago when a couple of my grandchildren were quite young, and I thought they might enjoy it. I thought it might be a way for their mother to get a few minutes peace at bedtime by tuning in to the channel and listening to some stories and so forth. Now, one of those grandchildren is now 18 and his sister is 13, so they're well and truly past enjoying those stories. But I know from the data that I get from YouTube every month that those stories are still very popular. Lots of people watch and listen to them. I know there's some particular stories that have been used by schools. Some to do with the stolen generations, some to do with the arrival of white people in Australia, and some stories dealing with World War I and World War II. And I used these stories myself in my teaching career before I retired, and I use them with primary school children. Now, I know these are popular because the data you get each month from YouTube tells you which videos are the most watched ones and how long people have watched them for and so forth. And until a few years ago, people who watch the videos used to be able to comment on them. Now, a few years ago, the United States Congress passed an act called the COPPA, which stands for Children Online Protection Act, I think. And it specifically asks you if the video you're about to post is made for children. If you say yes, then all comments are blocked as a safety measure so that unsavoury people can't try and contact children through your videos. And I'm happy with that, I agree with that. But before that happened, there were children who said they'd had to study this for social studies or civics or something like that. And in a couple of cases, in one of the stories, children commented that they wanted to know how it all turned out, even though I'd read the whole book. So perhaps the videos were watched in class, but then maybe they were also assigned as a homework thing, and kids needed to be able to tune in and watch. And these, as I said, I use them with children in primary school. That's children from about 8 years of age to about 12 years of age. So under the government's legislation, they would not be able to do that homework unless their parents were to log them in to see that video. Now that's not an insurmountable problem. It just is a bit of a problem. Now, one of my grandsons, who's now 18, he has his own YouTube channel. He's been running it for 5 or 6 years. He's very interested in, I think it's called stop motion animation, and he makes videos that are based on the Jurassic Park movie franchise. He uses Lego, and he makes these wonderful videos that take the story, the characters, or the events from the Jurassic Park movies, and he puts his own spin on things. The videos in some cases involve hours and hours of work because they're shot frame by frame should I say, using a camera on his phone and then transferred to a computer where they're turned into a movie. Now, of course, I'm his grandfather, so naturally I'm biased in favour of how good his work is. But judging by the number of views that he gets, and these are in the tens of thousands sometimes, and the comments that he gets from people, there are people who know about stop motion animation, who comment on how smooth the movement is, but also on how good the stories are. And he does make a small amount of money per month out of his videos. He has many more subscribers than I do. Good luck to him. And tens of thousands, sometimes, of views of his video. And so he makes a small amount of money out of it. And I'm very happy for him to do that. I suspect that a large portion of his audience are probably boys from about 7 or 8 years of age through to his age. Because whilst it's not exclusively boys who are interested in dinosaurs, boys at that age, some boys at that age, are interested in dinosaurs, and that's when he became interested in them and became serious about doing these things. And the people who view his videos, I assume, as I said, are about 7 or 8 years of age on to about his age, perhaps even a bit older. Now, if the government goes through with its over 13 and under can't have YouTube, can't watch it, then I suspect in his case he'll lose a large slice of his audience. He'll lose his subscriber base, or a large portion of it, and yes, he'll also lose some revenue and income. He doesn't have merchandise, but he does get a small payment per month from YouTube because of the number of views he gets, or something like that. Now, the government is proposing to keep YouTube for kids, and I suppose theoretically he could just transfer his content to a channel there, as could I with the stories that I was telling you about. And he would have to somehow let his subscribers and audience know that's where the content had gone, and they'd have to be, keen enough to follow. And so, all that's not impossible. It just adds a degree of difficulty to what, for him, is a very enjoyable activity. And and we will become less enjoyable if this thing goes through. Now, I don't want to suggest that there is no problem with the current arrangement. There are, as I said, people who use these platforms for all sorts of unsavoury purposes. The girl with the eating disorder that I mentioned, other people who attempt to implant awful ideas into the minds of our children. And whilst I don't know the extent of the problem, one child having an unsavoury experience when they just want to watch videos for entertainment is one child too many. The platforms refuse to monitor this unsavoury content. They make an argument about free speech. And the government says the safety of our children overrides your concerns about free speech, and we respectfully ask you to monitor and delete offensive material. Platforms say no. The government introduces legislation and says, well, you'll be banned. Children will be prevented from accessing your content. Now, I don't know how successful the ban will be. You might remember back when Kevin Rudd was the Prime Minister in 2007, or around that sometimes, he concocted a scheme to create an internet filter that would block adult sites and so forth for children. How this thing is a wonderful thing. Cost a couple of $1 million to develop. So a 15-year-old kid got around it in about 10 minutes or something. So, as I say, I don't know how successful this thing will be. And I'm not here to argue that such a thing shouldn't exist. I do think that we should have some ability to control this sort of material that we say is offensive or doesn't reflect Australian values in regard to minorities, women, and so forth. I just wanted to talk through the issue, put out some of the thoughts that are in people's minds, including my own, and get you to have a think about it. Now, if you've got an opinion or a comment you'd like to make, then by all means go ahead and do that in the appropriate place. When I become aware of your comment, I will respond. Please, as I'm always saying these days, respond to the comment, or the content rather. If I said something that's factually incorrect, then I'm happy to be corrected and have that explained to me. If you're a parent, then can I suggest to you, having been a parent myself, that, you do need to monitor what your children are viewing online, whether it's on the phone or the tablet, whatever device they use. And maybe you have to have a rule that says at a certain time everything's off, including your own phone. All the devices are stored in the kitchen or somewhere out of the bedrooms, so that you know that at 10 o'clock no one's watching YouTube, no one's doom scrolling through Facebook or something, and that you do have conversations with your children about the things that they watch on YouTube and the people that they might be following or paying attention to. I'm not preaching to you, but in all of this, there is a pretty big element, I think, of parental responsibility. We put these devices in the hands of our children we do have responsibilities to make sure they use them appropriately, and that we talk to them about the sort of content they may be viewing. Well, thank you for watching. As I said, if you have a comment, leave it where in the usual place. Enjoy your day, and I'll talk to you when I'm making the next running video. Thanks for watching.